And we're live. Good evening, people, and everyone out there. Welcome to the March 30, 2023 edition Zoning Board of Adjustment. Dee, would you call the roll, please?
Peter Belo,
I'm here.
Jonathan Gifford,
Here.
Jim Unger,
Here.
Michael Murray,
Here.
Jim O'Brien,
Here.
and I'd like to introduce Patrick Kiley, who is here as an alternate candidate for the board this evening. Copy of his application form is in your folder this evening.
Okay. Mr. Carley, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, so before we get going, we need to appoint Michael and Mr. O'Brien as voting members tonight. And the reason we're doing that for you folks in the audience is the Zoning Board of Adjustment by law is a five-person board. When we don't have five people, it makes decision-making, it affects decision-making a bit. So we have alternates. When we can't, so when we're short regular members, we appoint our alternates to be full voting members for the evening. They're trained, they go to training just like the rest of us do. Okay, so the first thing on our agenda here is application by Mr. Kiley to be a new alternate. Presently, he's the health officer here and deputy director of emergency management and a firefighter and EMT. Would anybody like to ask Mr. Kiley any questions?
I already asked him, what the heck are you doing? So it's all good.
See, I ran into him the other day when I came in to pick up my packet, and I asked him if he was out of his mind, and he said no. I'll take him at his word, and that he's willing to get involved in planning and zoning here and
There's
help out.
extra chairs.
It's a
If
good
somebody
thing.
wouldn't mind grabbing some extra chairs, there's some around the back there. Thank you very much.
Okay, and personally, I like the idea of us having some younger folks here on the board with us. Some of
Is
us.
that what under the bus looks like? I think so.
I'm older than you are. So I'm throwing myself under there first, or maybe second or third. I'm in the middle probably.
Yeah.
But do you have any questions or comments, Mr. Carley?
No questions, but thank you for the opportunity to apply here and be here. And I hope that I can make a meaningful difference as long as you all accept me as an alternate on this board. And definitely very interested to learn more and excited to be here. I'm newer to town, so I've been here 3 years, but did purchase a home here and expect to be here for quite some time. So very much looking forward to it. Thank you again.
Sure. And board, if we're lucky, you'll have a great experience here, and we can get another couple.
Well, if you stop hard selling it when you you just.
Sorry.
The only question I have is conflicts. Do you have any conflicts with the Thursday night when we set up the scheduling? Because I do, and it runs into.
So
problems, just making sure.
tonight I do, unfortunately. However, generally I do not.
Okay.
Yeah, could you give us a little more of your, background and your connection to the community?
Sure, absolutely. I moved here in 2020 when I met my now wife, who has grown up and lived in Plaistow her whole life. So I was introduced that way. So definitely a well-involved family in the community, and they've been here for quite some time. So I am learning a lot about the community and the little quirks and differences. But shortly after moving up here, I joined the fire department, then got further involved in the Plaistow Firefighter Association, became the deputy director of emergency management, and ultimately at this point became the health officer for the town. And I work right in the office back there. So very happy to be here. I think that, it's a great opportunity to get involved. I am looking to get more involved in the community and be able to make a difference. My background primarily is in emergency management, project management. I also have a background in healthcare regulatory compliance and public health, master's in public administration from Anna Maria and a bachelor's in public health from UMass Lowell. And just very interested and excited to be here.
Okay, thank you very much.
Would anybody like to make a motion?
I move to recommend the Board of Selectmen that Patrick Kiley be appointed as the alternate member of the Plaistow Zoning Board of Adjustments for the next 3-year term. Second?
I'll second it.
Okay, we had the second. Okay, Dee, why don't you call the roll?
Peter Bealow,
Yes.
Jonathan Gifford,
Aye.
Jim Unger,
Yes.
Michael Murray,
Yes,
Jim O'Brien.
Yes.
Welcome aboard.
Thank you very much.
Well,
I-
the selectmen have to
Selectmen
bless
still
this.
Well, I just
We got an in with the
One of them.
selectmen, so it's all good. I will get this on the next agenda for the selectmen. They may want you to come in and have a chat with them. I won't know until I put it on their agenda. If they do, I will coordinate with you to make sure the schedules work out,
Sure.
and then we'll go from there.
You made Mr. Kiley aware of the training coming up?
I have, but he has other commitment that day.
Well, I just want to point out that if
It will be recorded.
it,
Yeah.
it'll be recorded, and I don't know about others, but if you're signed up for it, they'll send you out the link,
Oh, okay.
to go watch it later. I don't know if they actually just send that link out to everybody.
They'll send it to me,
Oh, okay,
and I'll make sure it gets out.
perfect.
But the good thing about attending is you get to participate in the Q&A if you have
Well, that's
direct
true too.
questions. So
But this is also pretty short notice for
Yeah, it is.
somebody, so understood, definitely understood. But it is good, it is really good training, so. Okay, now before we get going to the rest of our agenda here. Bear with me for a moment, please. No, I guess let's do the reorganization.
Well, why don't we draft the voters, the alternates to be
I'm sorry, what?
recommend the alternates to
We
the
already did.
selectmen? No. We
Oh,
recommended him.
I started out with recommending the alternates
For tonight.
Nope.
tonight. Oh, I see. Sorry. I'm really,
Okay. In your mind, you did.
in my mind, I did. So yeah, good
that
point.
far. You had no?
Have a good
you
one.
all so much. I appreciate your time.
Good seeing you.
So are you folks, just want to make sure, formally on camera, are you folks interested in becoming full members?
Yes. Certainly.
You say that with such conviction. Well, then we need to recommend, so we need to, someone to make a motion to recommend them to the selectmen?
I'll make a motion to recommend Michael and Jim to the selectmen to become, is it permanent members or not permanent?
there's a
Full-time-
draft motion.
full
There's a
members.
draft
There's a draft
motion in
right
your
here.
agenda.
Oh, I didn't see that.
There's always a draft in the agenda, Jim.
I was making it up. I move to recommend to the Board of Selectmen the status of Michael Murray and Jim O'Brien be changed from alternate to regular members of the Plaistow Zoning Board of Adjustment, each for a 3-year term.
I second.
Now let's call the roll on that.
Jonathan Gifford,
Yes.
Jim Unger,
Yes.
Michael Murray.
should I abstain from this vote?
Not if you want it to pass.
Oh, okay. Yes,
Jim O'Brien,
Yes.
Peter Bealow.
Yes.
Vote is 5-0-0.
Okay, now we get down to reorganization of the board.
I I nominate Peter for chair.
You sure you want to do that?
Yes, I do. You have the time, you take the time, you make sure that everything's lined up. You get a little quirky at times, but you run a good meeting.
I'll second that.
Only at times. That's
Only
good.
at times. All right, moving forward, I'd like to also nominate Jim Unger as VP, Vice Chair, sorry.
Second.
Jim, you good with that?
Yeah, no say in that?
You-
Yeah, I'll do it.
So
As long as you're here every week, every month.
I may miss it. I may miss a month here and there.
You always have me to help you through.
So you want to do? Can we do this as one motion? Okay. So we have two
You should ask
nominations.
if there's any other nominations first.
Sorry?
I said we might want to ask if there's any other nominations
Yeah,
first
I
for
was
the
just about
record.
to do that.
Okay.
Anyone else want to nominate? No. Sadly, at this point, you guys aren't. I don't think could do this. It's because
They have to become regular before they could.
yeah, you got to be regular.
Well, you could do it conditioned upon them being approved by the Board of Selectmen.
But there'll be another year. And somebody wants it, just tell me. It's yours. Okay. Okay. So we have two motions. Well, we have it out as two motions.
So I move to recommend that Jim Unger as vice chair and Peter Bilo as chair for the year of
He
2023.
could bind his motion. Look at how good he is.
Need a second?
Second.
Thank you.
Let's call the roll.
Jim Unger,
Yes.
Michael Murray,
Yes.
Jim O'Brien,
Yes.
Peter Belo,
Sure.
Jonathan Gifford.
Absolutely.
Your vote is 5-0-0.
We don't always vote 5-0-0, by the way, folks. Okay. Before we get into the public hearings, kind of spiel to read to everybody. Kind of just a discussion of how this whole thing works. So, meeting procedure. Each public hearing will be opened in turn, one after the other. The applicant will present their case, the board will question, and then the hearing will be open to the public for comment. So you will have a chance to ask questions and comment. Once everyone who wishes to be heard has been, the public hearing will be closed. Once a public hearing's been closed, there can't be any additional input allowed. The board will immediately deliberate on that application before opening another public hearing on another application. There could be times where applications that are so interrelated that the board may decide to hear them simultaneously, but each will be deliberated separately. All motions regarding relief will be made in the affirmative to grant for clarity and consistency. The format of the motion should not be considered indicative of how any member, including the maker of the motion or the second of the motion, might vote. Written notices of decisions will be sent out to the applicant and made available for public viewing within 5 business days. Per the New Hampshire RSAs, or state laws, if any party of standing feels that the board has erred in their decision, they have 30 days to request a rehearing. No permits will be issued within that 30-day period. The board reserves the right to continue their deliberations on any matter if they feel the need to consult with legal counsel. All decisions will be made in accordance with the New Hampshire RSAs. Okay, so tonight we have a 5-member board because our alternates are here, but just so people know, the New Hampshire RSAs require that any motion for relief can only be granted by a favorable vote of at least 3 members of the board, as opposed to a simple majority of the members present at any meeting. Therefore, when there's less than a full board of 5 voting members present, the applicant's chances of approval could be considered diminished. When there are less than 5 voting members present, the applicant has the right to continue their application to the next available meeting in hopes that there will be 5 voting members available to hear their application. If any applicant decides to proceed with less than a 5-member board, they do so at their own peril. If an applicant moves forward and does not prevail in their request for relief, the lack of a 5-member board will not be considered as grounds to request a rehearing. I don't think, these aren't continuances at all. So I don't have to worry about the last continuance bit.
No, the last is just so that you have the right language if we do have to announce a
Right.
continuance.
Well, for now, we don't.
Right.
Okay. Okay, Dee, would you call the first hearing, please?
I'd like to call the first two together, if that's
Two
okay
together,
with
I was
you.
gonna.
Yep.
Yeah. Because they're pretty intertwined.
These are both continued from February 23rd of 2023. 23-01, a request from AFGC LLC and F. Corey for a variance from Article 5, Section 220-32MB to allow conversion of 3 second-floor commercial units into 2 one-bedroom residential efficiency apartments. The property is located at 176 Plaistow Road, Tax Map 31, Lot 60 in the C3 zoning district, where residential use is not allowed. The applicant is the property owner of record. Case number 23-02, a request from AFGC LLC and F. Corey for a variance from Article 5, Section 220-32MC1A to allow the conversion of 3 second-floor commercial units into 2 one-bedroom residential efficiency apartments where the existing lot does not meet minimum lot sizing requirements. The property is located at 176 Plaistow Road, Tax Map 31, Lot 60 in the C3 zoning district. The applicant is the property owner of record.
So, Mr. Zilch, we see
I've
you
returned.
again.
It's been a while.
It has been. I like the effect.
Well, I started growing it the last time you had a full member board. So I'm happy to see happy to see you have an alternate come
I
in
was going to
tonight.
ask you if you wanted to use this, the pointer. Did you want
I have one.
Oh, okay.
I have one, but thank you though.
So we'll hear both of these cases together. They seem
Sure.
very
Yeah,
intertwined.
when we do that, it's fine, and I can just kind of give you an overview of what we're looking for.
Okay.
If you can take a moment here.
Sure.
For the record, Charlie Zilch from SCC and Associates. I'm here on behalf of AFGC LLC, which is Ann Corey, whom is with us tonight. She's in the back. You just wave to him. So she can answer any questions you might have about the property of the business as well. So this is for the variance request, as you just stated, for her property located at 176 Plaistow Road. I'm sure everybody's familiar with the property. She has a hair salon in there, just a couple buildings past the, what's next to it? Oh, the Clam. Yeah. Yeah, just a couple buildings past that, and at the very end of where Walton Road used to come out onto 125. So is everybody familiar with the location?
Yes.
Okay. So the site's identified as tax map 31, lot 60. It contains 0.82 acres. The property has frontage on both Route 125 as well as Walton Road. The frontage on Route 125 is 393 feet and has 391 feet of frontage on Walton Road. So the site is located entirely, as Dee stated, within the commercial C3 zone, as well as the Aquifer Protection District. The commercial C3 zone extends to the north, south, and east of the site and supports numerous commercial uses. Immediately adjacent to the abutting property to the south within the same zone, 174 Plaistow Road supports a mixed commercial and residential grandfathered use. So the building owned by Rob Waters just to the south of it has a commercial use downstairs and a couple apartments above it that are grandfathered. That's a point that needs to be made. And then the zone across Walton Road to the west of the site, that is medium density residential. And as you know, that's got a fairly substantial, well-established neighborhood, residential neighborhood throughout that area. So on the property, as you can see from the pictometry, is a 2-story wood frame commercial building. The building was constructed back in 1975, and it utilizes access from not only Route 125 for the lower floor, it also has access from Walton Road for the upper floor. So the building is kind of set up in 2 elevations, lower floor where they have commercial use, the smaller spaces down below, and then they have access in from Walton Road to the 2nd floor, and the road is built up to that elevation there. So it's kind of 2-tier setup with this property, a little bit unique. So the upper floor is approximately 2,300 square feet, and that overhangs the 1st floor on the Route 125 side. So it has a bump out on the 125 side and slightly larger than the lower floor, which is 1,800 square feet. So that floor is divided into 3 commercial units. The units have street numbers relating to Walton Road. So you have Unit 25A, which supported an online vehicle sales business, which is no longer occupied. It has 25B, and that supports a small spa. And then in 25C, that's the hair salon that's operated by Ann. Downstairs, that is about 1,800 square feet, slightly smaller space, and it's currently unoccupied. So that's the status of the building, kind of gives you an idea of what is being run there. So noted, the access is available from both frontages. The main access is from Route 125. As you can see, the entrance is just north of the building and leads into a large parking lot, which is on the south side of the building. The access from Walton Road is a large apron off of Walton Road and allows for parking along the face of the building. So you have an access in from 125, and then you have a very generous parking lot south of the building. And then on the upper level, you have basically a large apron right in front of the building where cars are able to nose into the end of the building and park along that side of the building. The only outside connection from the lower to the upper floor is a set of stairs and decks located on the south side of the building. So if you want to go to the second floor from downstairs, from the lower elevation, you get up the deck, and then you can go to the access. So like I said, a nice setup with a 2-tier building here. The building itself is served by its own individual septic system and well. It does have an option for municipal water, and I think that at some point they'll probably tie in, as most businesses will. But right now it's on an individual water supply. That water supply is just north of the building. The septic system is a large concrete state-approved system, and that's located under the big parking lot that I mentioned to the south side of the building. This system is designed for a fairly generous flow. It pretty much maximizes the sewage loading on the site. Right now, it's designed up for 1,280 gallons a day, and that was installed in 2007, so it's a fairly new system that's there. And that system was installed in support of the hair salon that was proposed for the lower floor space in place of a real estate office that they had at one time. But now the hair salon is upstairs, and the lower floor is unoccupied. So the system allows for 1,190 gallons per day flow from the proposed lower floor hair salon, and then 90 gallons per day from the upper 3 professional offices. So that's kind of how it's split up to the total of 1,280 gallons a day. Like I said, pretty good sized system, fairly new. So since purchasing the property back in 2007, Ms. Corey has always maintained the commercial use of the site and has upgraded and improved as warranted when needed, depending on tenants coming in and out there, any repairs to parking, that sort of thing. The site's in good shape and well maintained, as she has always done with it. So this is a commercial building with over 4,100 square feet of commercial space if you add up the 2 floors. And they're available, a fair amount of that is available right now. As I said, the downstairs is unoccupied, and you have a unit upstairs that's unoccupied. So as of this application, less than half of the space is occupied right now. So Ms. Corey has aggressively marketed the space to no avail. This can partially be attributed to the rezoning. As you know, this was a C3 zoned property. And now it's,
C1.
I'm sorry, it was a C1 zone property. Now it's a C3 zone property, which is more limiting to what was there before. So that kind of reduces opportunity. And then I guess additionally, since COVID, as everyone knows, office space really isn't as in demand as it used to be. A lot of people learned how to Zoom meet and things like that. So limited options here. So to take advantage of that space, we really took a good look at it, and based on the unique layout of the building, we basically submitted an application for your consideration to convert the 3 upper floor commercial units into 2 single residential units, being 1-bedroom efficiencies. So looking to convert that from commercial to residential, just the upstairs. She'll move her salon downstairs and whatever other space she'll need downstairs. So looking to change that. So that would be the first variance, is basically the request just for the residential use within the commercial space. The second variance request that we're asking for, if needed, that relates to lot sizing. So if the first request fails, then obviously we don't have to go there and review that. But I'm not sure that lot sizing really matters. Maybe I have a little bit of a difference of opinion with zoning officer on that. I think if you're granted the use, then the onus is on us to prove that we can accommodate the residential use mixed with the commercial use as it relates to sewage floating and the state approval for the septic system. But that's up for discussion at some point. So that's basically what we're looking for. Any questions?
Yeah, I have one to start with. When they changed, you mentioned that the change from C1 to C3
Yes.
affected affected the marketplace for this lot.
Yes.
How so?
Well, if you look at the allowed uses and what they are now, it's been reduced. And the intensity of those uses have been reduced as well. So
But with this particular building, this lot,
with this lot, yes.
how
this
did that
property,
affect it?
This property.
I mean,
Well,
like, that really seemed to like mainly limit. You can't have big box stores coming in and things like that.
well, and also like trade businesses, things like that. So if this building was converted to, say, a contractor's yard space or something like that, you can no longer do that. And that would have been an option.
Not in the C1. Contractors' yards are not allowed in the C1.
In trade units then, is that what?
Trade businesses
Okay,
are, yes.
yeah, trade units then. Yeah. So that would have been a potential use on the site.
Okay.
Now, the list of permitted uses is trade businesses.
In C3,
Is that what this list is that we're looking at?
well, it's
Yeah,
in C3.
Yeah. So trade business is a permitted use, as well as small industry.
What page?
This is,
Hard to tell. Huh? I know.
well, I don't think our packet here is numbered.
It's not numbered.
Halfway through the packet. It has the C3 commercial table of use.
There it is. It's labeled page 85 up on top.
Yeah, but that's from
Right, you
the,
found
So-
it quicker than I did.
Actually, trade business is allowed there.
yeah.
Small industry.
I didn't think any of the uses actually changed.
I think it was just big box stores and things like that that they wrote out.
What changed was more the requirements for setbacks and maximum building size. I think the permitted uses table is the same. If somebody could open the C1, I can read off C3 and you can compare as you go along.
Oh.
It's on page, you have the book there, Mr. Belo. It's on page 33.
Did the current C1 change as well?
No,
So if you're looking at the C1 now, is that the exact same as it was?
Yeah, I've got C1.
The C3 was established, or did that change as well?
the only thing that changed in the C1 when the C3 was established was the formation of the C1 overlay district, but that's if you have 400,000 square feet or
Okay.
more.
Actually, my page 33 is stormwater management stuff.
It's page 33. I've got it. 13 places of worship. Looks like it came off, but I don't think you're
Yeah,
going to convert
I
it to a
think that's-
church.
So you have retail, wholesale, personal service business, business office, professional office, bank, restaurant, funeral establishment, commercial recreation, private service club, publishing, vehicular broker office, drive-through restaurant, produce stand, essential services, theater, trade business, and small industry is allowed in the C3. Just took away some of the public safety uses and vehicle storage
Vehicle trailer. Yep. And place of worship.
in place of worship.
Okay.
But anything that could fit in a small building like that would typically probably be on this list.
I would think that. Okay, that was my main question. You folks have any questions here?
Well, I'm just wondering, you're saying, using the word efficiency apartment,
Yes.
in real estate lingo, an efficiency apartment is usually very small, like combined living and sleeping area and such. If these are pretty big apartments, they're about 1,200 square feet each.
Right.
So how do we confine that to one bedroom?
Well, like I said, it would be a one-bedroom, be up to the building inspector to review once the unit's been, well, actually, you would have to review the building plan, because you would review that first, and then the septic design would limit it as well, and then, of course, to do his inspection as the unit is being built to maintain the one-bedroom efficiency status.
So, there's difficulty in Plastow in using the term efficiency apartment because we don't define it in our zoning.
Okay.
When I did my required Google search on what an efficiency apartment is, the answers I was getting were they're similar to a studio, like one big room plus a bathroom, but the kitchen area would be limited to a small a sink, something smaller than a standard refrigerator, like a counter height refrigerator,
Okay.
and maybe no stove, just a microwave. And I'm just wondering, is that what you folks
I think
are envisioning?
what they're looking for is basically single occupancy or a couple, whether it be an elderly couple or a couple starting off or a single person. That's really what they're looking for tenancy here. They're not looking for family. They're not looking for, like I said, these are just going to be one-bedroom units in each apartment. And so just going to divide the space that's now 3 units for commercial into 2 one-bedroom units.
Okay.
So I do have a question on parking.
Yes.
Just because I plow part of that street and I
Okay.
turn around right there, that's really, really tight. Are you proposing that you can put 4 vehicles comfortably up top there?
Yeah,
As
if
you're
this
saying,
if this
maybe 2
advances,
people?
then obviously we're going to have to go to planning board. And I did take a look at that. There is room to adjust that parking lot to get the vehicles off the street side where they park now, because right now they've got 3 commercial units, and when those 3 commercial units are full, there's more cars there, and they tend to be hanging out into the right of way. And if you combine it down to the 2 apartments, one-bedroom apartments, where you'd have to have 2 spaces per each unit, then we could find space out of the right of way and out of the way of the plowing.
Okay.
You folks have any initial questions here?
Question on, if you move the residential in there, would there be any problems with the property line setbacks for the building?
Good question.
Well, the property lines are established, the building's established, so
Yeah.
my feeling is the grandfathered use. We're not changing the building, we're not adding, we're not subtracting from the building, nothing changes.
Are you changing the use of the building?
Correct.
So I'm not sure that would be grandfathered when you change the use of the building.
Well, let's ask, what's a present setback from the street?
For that zone,
No, for this building.
The map you submitted should be on there,
is it here?
plan. There should be tabs at the top,
There it
Charlie.
is.
Oh, missed it. Where would it be, D? Yeah, you might have to find this for me.
And you have a plan in your folders too, folks.
You're right, but I don't see any measurements there.
Scale. No, that's the other one.
Next to it.
Yep.
There you go. And if you do a little of this.
Yeah, so it's gonna be. I think I had the zoning note in there somewhere. Okay, I do have it's 50 feet front and 35 side and rear when abutting commercial uses, or 50 feet when abutting residential uses. So it's more restrictive when you're abutting a residential use as a commercial use.
That's the zoning. We don't know what this building has right now,
Yeah.
existing.
Yeah. How far is that?
I would guesstimate, and I'll show you here, this corner roughly,
Yep.
that's probably somewhere in the vicinity of 10 or 15 feet off the right-of-way line.
Okay. Okay, but why don't we go, if the board's okay, why don't we go through the variance criteria
This is just for the first one, correct?
for the first one?
Okay.
Would you like me to run through the criteria?
Pardon me?
Criteria?
Yes, please.
Sure. So the proposed variance will not be contrary to the public interest because my response is granting the variance would allow a residential use on a commercial property that has a unique layout as this site would not be contrary to the public interest. Currently, Walton Road, for which the proposed units would be accessed from, no longer connects to Route 125. The only access for these upper units is from Walton Road or Shady Lane, both in from Main Street. Maintaining the 3 existing units as commercial use could potentially create larger traffic volume through an existing residential neighborhood than what would be generated from 2 efficiency apartments. Additionally, routing employees, customers, and suppliers through this neighborhood is more impacting than the lesser impacting residential use. Limiting either the employees, customers, or deliveries to the Route 125 access would create additional demands on the outside stair access, which has its own limitations. The upper floor of this building has adequate off-street parking in front of the Walton Road facing facade. Conversion of this level to a residential use in look can easily be accomplished. Additionally, the existing septic system and water supply can support the proposed conversion. All considered, converting a commercial use to residential use that faces and accesses through a residential neighborhood will have no negative effect to the general health, welfare, and safety of the general public. Moreover, the variance, if granted, will not alter the essential character of the neighborhood. Want me to just go through each one? Okay.
We'll stop you. Don't worry.
All right, thank you. All right, the spirit and intent of the ordinance is preserved because the intent of the ordinance adopted in 2021 is to limit the building size and protect Plaistow's village center, schools, and neighborhoods from the overwhelming impacts of increased traffic and congestion, all of which this request meets. Simply converting a commercial use to a potentially less impacting residential use is certainly within the intended goal of the ordinance. Although residential use is not listed as a permitted use, this property is quite unique in which it can easily incorporate the residential use on a commercial site without impact to one another, meaning both uses can be supported without interruption to each other as it relates to parking access and internal operation. The property abutting on the south 174 Plaistow Road supports both a mixed commercial and residential grandfathered use. The residential use is 2 apartments located on the 2nd floor as with this proposal. In that particular case, the residential use utilizes the same parking and access as the commercial business and does so without conflict. In our case, as proposed, these units will be 1-bedroom efficiency apartments and will most likely only have 1 or 2 occupants. This limited occupancy supports the objective of the ordinance as noted and ensures that the spirit and intent of the ordinance is preserved.
Okay.
Number 3, there is substantial justice in granting the variance because this zone, C3, is intended to support commercial uses, businesses, mostly along the Route 125 corridor. It does not recognize unique situations where secondary access is available from a residential serving roadway. Given the reduced commercial uses allowed within the zone and the downturn in demand for office space, it would provide substantial justice in granting the variance to allow for this conversion. It would allow the property owner the opportunity to offer residential space to maintain viability of the building, whereas residential rental space is in demand. The owner would also be able to maintain the residential access and parking to the Walton Road side and keep the Route 125 side dedicated to commercial use only. Additionally, this request is supportive of the governor's recent incentive to alleviate the housing shortage through the Invest New Hampshire Housing Fund. Currently, the state's vacancy rate for this type of housing is less than 1%. So it would guarantee success in this case. The benefit would not be offset by any negative impact. Number 4, the values of surrounding properties will not be diminished. As currently operated, this is a commercial use that accesses and faces a residential neighborhood. The proposal is to convert the commercial use of the second floor to a residential use as noted. Adequate access, parking, septic, and water supply exist, and no additional site changes would be required. The proposal is to add residential use adjacent to an abutting residential zone. Any commercial signs would be removed, and a site plan would be filed with the planning board for review and consideration. In all, the proposed conversion does not adversely affect the health, welfare, and safety of the general public and will not diminish the values of the surrounding property values. And lastly, little enforcement of the provisions of the ordinance would result in an unnecessary hardship. My response to that is denial would result in an unnecessary hardship if literal enforcement of the provisions of the ordinance were applied, meaning requiring that the second floor of this existing building remain commercial rather than allowing the conversion to residential could result in greater impact on the surrounding community. This building's layout is quite unique in which it has 2-level access with an opportunity to provide additional residential housing with minimal change. The ordinance does not consider properties with access from roadways primarily utilized as residential access, but does recognize the need to lessen impact on these types of roadways and the neighborhoods that they serve. This proposal would meet that intent.
I guess I'm having some difficulty with with your assertion that leaving the commercial use as is on the second floor would result in greater impact to the surrounding community, because that's the present state. So it's not an increase, it's a net no change.
Right. But conversion to residential could ultimately lessen that impact. So you have vehicles right now, you have 3 units there, 3 commercial units, legal units, and you could have businesses there with customers coming in, deliveries, the owners, operators in and out of there every day. And with residential, 2 units, upwards of maybe 2 people in each unit, it's a lot less traffic and a lot less impact.
So in reference to the post on 2, and will most likely only have 1 or 2 occupants, that's a variable that, I mean.
I meant either 1 or 2, most likely 1 or 2, not 2 or more.
Okay.
Yeah, the biggest thing to me is the size of the apartments. It's my experience that the more rooms you have, whether they're defined as bedrooms or not, someone will end up living there. Because, you see people, they call it the family room, someone lives there, they call it the music room. And it's just not, if there was a way to have it only be literally a couple or a single person, it's one thing, but that's not enforceable. But it's certainly not the kind of lot you would want children on. There's just no place, to play or anything for that type of occupancy. And I don't know how you can enforce the 1 bedroom personally. Once
Would
it's
the
built.
board consider limiting it to 2 occupants maximum for each unit?
I don't know how we can enforce that
I don't know, yeah,
as a
if you
town.
can.
Yeah,
That's
But it could be a condition of the variance.
still, I'm just not seeing how the town can enforce that. We're not going to send a building inspector out to this or we can't send anybody anywhere. But the town isn't going to send a building inspector out every time the tenants change. And if those were apartments.
Because the biggest concern with having children in that type of lot,
Yeah.
with no play area.
Yeah.
And, with the occupancies that are allowed by the zoning, I don't see it being a hardship on the land either.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you when
Said
you're
with
facing that way.
with the occupancies that are allowed in the zoning, I don't see there being a hardship with the land. It's more of a financial hardship, that we don't deal with.
Right. And in my heart of hearts, with my business degree, I'm very aware of, and personally have dealt with a price elasticity curve, which is basically a fancy way of saying And you can sell anything if the price is right.
Yeah, but at the sake of viability, though, I mean, you have to have a certain amount of income.
I
come in.
understand, but we as a zoning board don't deal with that.
Right. But surely the board must recognize this is a very unique property with the access from Walton Road. It's access through a residential neighborhood. And that's where I think we have the strongest argument here is right now you have commercial use running through a residential neighborhood that no longer has access out to 125. So you have to come in through Walton Road
Well, actually,
off of Main Street.
that's not true. There is a stairway that to go upstairs. There are businesses that have.
I'm talking about vehicle traffic and people coming in and that sort of thing. To access that upper. I mean, sometimes when you come in here, if it's snowing, I mean, people are going to drive directly to their building. And there is parking there now, so they're not going to forego the use of that parking with these commercial units. So they're there, they're going to use them.
Yeah, I hear
There's
you.
an opportunity to lessen that intensity. And it is, like I said, it's unique. When you go out there, you take a look at the site, because the building's basically accessible from the Walton roadside just to that second floor, and then you have access to the lower floor from 125. It almost really splits the building.
And for the record, I did do that. There's so little traffic up there. I actually was like stopped on the road and nobody said anything. So nobody tried to push me along.
When she utilizes the second floor, does she come in on Walton Road or did she come
Yes.
up the stairway?
Both. I've seen customers in the lower parking lot that have used the stairway, but I also see them parking up off of Walton Road as well.
Okay.
Any additional questions, folks? This is going to be an interesting deliberation, I think. Dee, do we have any letters,
No,
emails, anything?
no.
Okay. Is there anybody out in the audience who wished to speak in favor of this variance request? Or I'll open it up, or just have general questions about it. If so, please come up to a microphone over there. Folks out in TV land need to hear you. And
Right up
right up there.
From this side. You can just pull it up a little higher, and I need your name and address, please.
Jennifer Lovett, 28 Walton Road.
Are you right across the street from this?
3161 is my lot, so a couple houses down.
Okay.
So I would like to address first the traffic. This building, I've lived on this road for 20 years, and it has always been, it was cars for you or something, and the people have always been very respectful. They work business hours. The hair salon, they work, Tuesday, Friday, some Saturdays. The ladies that work up there, very respectful in terms of traffic. The patrons that come, not a problem. With the front, that's not even an apron. It's not even from here to this desk for parking. So when it's full, there's usually between 6 and 10 cars, and there's not enough space and they're jutting into the street. So that's the first thing I would like to bring up. In terms of if you do approve efficiency apartments, or I don't know how, to Mr. Unger's point, how you would be able to enforce, even if it's a 1-bedroom, 6 people living there or staying there, or how you would be able to put any conditions around that. In terms of storage, where are they going to put their trash cans? Where are they going to put their cars? There's no room for the cars have to go in at an angle. They can't park straight. So if you've got 2 people living there, 3 people living there, 4 people living there, at least with the business, the commercial like it is now, that the car's there, they're done at 5 o'clock at night. They're not there overnight parking, and they're not, impacting plowing, to your point, things of that nature. I respect that Ms. Corey has done a great job, keeping the building up, and, it's clean and the landscaping is nice. I just can't see why and how you'd be able to enforce having a 1 or 2 bedroom or 1 or 2 people in those apartments if they were to be converted. I think that's all I have to say.
So if I could characterize, I think you're speaking against.
I am in it for the most part. I just don't see. I mean, I appreciate what she's trying to do. Moving the salon back downstairs, but I don't know how you could control having enough. The people and the traffic, and if there's going to be pets, and there's no storage. Like she's going to build like storage units for people to put their stuff. I just think that I would prefer that if it had to do anything, just stay the way that it is. Just because it's been, that building's been like that forever. And the people that have worked there and have utilized that upstairs commercial space have been respectful of the residents, and they obey the speed limit, and they are usually, try to cram their cars in there as best they can. And they've done well at that. I just don't know how you'd be able to police a residential unit.
I understand. Thank you for your input.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else speaking either in favor or against this, or again have questions? No? Okay, this is like now or holders, or it. Okay.
Give Mr. Zilch a chance to rebut, perhaps?
Oh, I'm sorry. Sure.
The only thing I could offer up in addition, to the building inspector having a set of plans, clearly defining the living space here, and then going in and doing his inspections prior to occupancy, is perhaps draft up a rental agreement that would be between the property owner and the prospective tenant that limits them to only 2 occupants, perhaps no pets, that sort of thing, make it a little bit more limiting, and offer that as part of the building permit application.
We have no jurisdiction over something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Rental agreements, people break them all the time. Then you're just stuck evicting somebody. And that can take a long time too. I unfortunately see that every day in what I do for a living.
And I can, as demonstrated by the plan here, we can show some parking spaces that would be outside of the right-of-way and within the lot area. So right now, there's no striping out there, and people just nose into the front of the building, and they tend to hang out into the right-of-way of Walton Road. But we could stripe that and organize the parking there as well. We really only need 4 spaces.
Guests.
Well, that's why I'm showing 6 here for potential guests or for UPS delivery, that sort of thing. They could have some space there and still be out of the right-of-way. So that can be organized and maintained out of the streetway. I just think it's kind of a nice opportunity to help alleviate. I know it's only 2 apartments, but housing is a shortage. Apartments are in demand. It's a great way to help Ms. Corey here keep the property tenancy full and maintain viability of the property. Doesn't seem like it's a huge change. We could make this look, very nice, clean up the facade, get rid of the business signs on that side, make it look very residential, as with the rest of the neighborhood on the opposite side of Walton Road.
okay. That's it. Does anybody have any other questions?
No, I make a motion.
So before we go anywhere, I think initially I thought we should take these together and then deliberate. But just after hearing this presentation, I'm thinking we should just go into deliberations on this. Are you folks okay with that?
Yep. Fine by me.
Mr. Zilch, do you mind us doing that?
That's fine.
Okay. Any final comments from anybody here? Please, just come up to the mic.
Need your name and address, please?
My name is Julie Healy, 13 Walton Road. I just have a concern mainly with this apron area. I don't think that is like a parking lot. It's a very small section of road. As it is right now, like when there's cars there, it can be problematic. And it would be nice if there would be something like this going in, if any and all tenants and customers, besides people who are handicapped perhaps, could use the lower lot. I mean, you can't just say, well, it's snowing and they can't use it, because we do live in New England. You know what I mean? That's part of it. And I know that there's a concern with the stairs and their age, but that's something that would need to be addressed, I think, because there's clearly a huge parking area for a business that was meant to have a front on 125. So that's my biggest concern, is that parking area. It's really not a parking lot. It's a small area of asphalt that people are parking on all willy-nilly, and with 2 cars apiece and guests and bikes and whatever they have, that's going to be problematic, especially in the overnight hours. So that's my only comment.
Okay, fair enough.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anything further from the board? Charlie, do you want to say any rebuttal on that? Or?
I'm fine. I think it has adequate parking there. I demonstrated by plan.
Well,
Those are full-size parking spaces of,
the scale here is what, 1 inch equals 20?
correct.
Is this actually to scale? This has been reduced, though.
I have a,
That's a reduced
I have a
plan, yeah.
full-size one, if you want to look at the full.
No, I'm just saying a standard parking space does have a size. It might
Yes,
be
and
8
those
by
are standard
20
parking spaces.
or whatever. So basically, the end of these are right out to the edge of pavement.
Correct.
So
To the edge of the right-of-way. I put spaces where I could afford spaces that would stay within the property and not in the right-of-way.
yeah, no, I'm just trying to see where the edge of pavement of the roadway here is.
So
It's
it would
not-
be in from the edge of the traveled way, probably about 4 feet to the end of the parking space. And then the parking space would go 18 feet towards the building. They're 9 by 18 spaces.
No slur to the folks who plow that area, but if there's cars there 24/7 during snow, somebody's going to lose their rear end.
Again, I turn around in there with an F-350 and a blade, and I cannot fit my truck with the blade without being halfway into the road. That's my concern, only because I literally use that spot to turn around, so I know what size the lot is, and it's tight. And we can't, control that environment. We can't control how many vehicles are going to be there. We can't control what size of vehicles are going to be there. And that's one of my major concerns about making it residential.
Even how well people park. They stay 6 feet off the building, and they could be hanging out in the road.
Right. And if you have, 2 adults and 1 child that came home from college, now you have 3 cars. Or, we can't really control what happens inside that building once it leaves this room. We have no enforcement. So, we can read the thing and then go forward.
Okay.
So there is no striping there now, and cars do park probably at the closest point of the building, which would leave the back end of the car out onto the street or within the right of way. So I could understand where Jonathan would have an issue plowing through there with the vehicles as they are now. But with this proposal that would require site plan approval, we would stripe the parking lot and organize the cars so that they're no longer in that right of way, which would give you more room to plow. There is room to do it.
Okay. Anything final, folks? Yes or no? You're good? Okay. I wasn't sure how to interpret it, the nod. And your side?
Yes.
Okay. Let's call this hearing to a close. And does somebody go into deliberative? Does somebody have a motion?
Yes, I would like to move to grant the request for a variance from Article 5, Table 220-32M.B to allow 2 one-bedroom residential units at the property known as 176 Plaistow Road, Tax Map 31, Lot 60 in the C3 zoning district with the following conditions. The applicant will need to seek planning board approval of an amended site plan to include the additional residential use. The plan that was submitted with the application shall be the same plan that is submitted to the planning board as it relates to the variance granted. Any change to the plan as it relates to the variance voids the approval. Application to the planning board must be made within 180 days of the date of approval.
I'll second.
Got all that, D?
Yeah.
Okay, well, what are people's initial thoughts before we go through the 5 variance criteria?
My only thought is the size of the units and how you're gonna be sure 1 or 2 people live there. I mean, I happen to see that every day, and usually any room that's available ends up being sleeping rooms.
Yeah. But you have to put that into terms in the variance criteria. That isn't a variance criteria at the end of the day. The fact that there may be more people there.
Well, I also don't see a hardship on the property.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you. again.
I don't see. I'm speaking in the mic.
No, the microphones don't amplify when you face that.
Don't really see a hardship on the property. I can see it being a financial hardship, by all means, but I don't see it being a hardship on the property. There's a lot of uses that are allowed there.
Right. Switching over from C1 to C3 doesn't really change
Sorry?
it. Switching over from C1 to C3 really doesn't change any of the options for that particular building.
Right, the uses are
Basically,
pretty much the same. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, precluded big uses.
And I understand that, the economy is where it is and rentals are down when it comes to business, but that's universal. I don't mean to sound crass, but that's straight across the board. Understanding that if it were in a less commercial area, although the uniqueness of this upstairs, downstairs lays out in a nice format, but knowing that the upstairs has virtually no parking, that's my biggest holdup. Is you're going to be in the middle of Walton Road, and I know Charlie has explained that there's room, but you start putting the bigger vehicles there, and there's going to be a problem, in my personal opinion.
Yeah, when I went through that area, when I pulled in with my 4Runner, which is not the size of an F-350, but it's still a hefty vehicle, I felt kind of the rear end of it exposed out there.
And when I look at that, I'm seeing a potential safety problem for young children, and whether it's a single parent with a child or children coming and visiting residents. The setback from the doors to the road is just too close, especially if they're running out from in between cars. The setback isn't far enough, to grant that.
So in a way, I think that might actually go as being contrary to the public interest to have that lack of setback from Walton Road. Let's go through the variance criteria. If you folks are good with that. So the variance wouldn't be contrary to the public interest. It's a two-edged sword. I can see the need for more apartments, in the state. Could we use them? It's hard to tell. One of the problems we have, not just us, all the towns in New Hampshire, is we can't do like a census on what apartment rents are. The owners don't have to tell us. So we don't know really what's available at what price out there. Maybe what's available, we get an idea of, but not at the price points. but I think the closest to Walton Road is an issue, especially with if small kids can be there, and there's no way to eliminate them. Please chime in if somebody has.
You're in a commercial zone. I'm sorry, I understand the uniqueness of this, but you're in a commercial zone, and I can't see, in my opinion, granting that.
Yeah. The spirit of the ordinance is observed. Well, actually, not at all. It says you're not supposed to have residential properties in a commercial zone. And I do know that there are several units in this between the C1 and C3 zone that have commercial units that are grandfathered. I think was it Power Sports has one or two units. They've been there for basically ever. But
The abutting property has,
pardon me?
the abutting property is
The abutting
is split,
property does. Yeah.
but that's grandfathered. That was prior to, rules and regulations.
Substantial justice is done. I don't know. That's really not that clear to me on the substantial justice. That's always a fuzzy one. The values of surrounding properties won't be diminished. We don't. I don't think we've seen any evidence that they would be diminished from this proposal.
No, I don't.
Literal enforcement of the provisions would result in unnecessary hardship.
Well, if she has rentals in there now as businesses, that's,
Well, she has herself in there now, I think, but we're not taking testimony anymore.
right.
But there are clearly 3 units up there for commercial use
Right.
that have in the past been rented, at least. There's a valid use for in that property already, historically, has been. So yeah, I'm not seeing this as an unnecessary hardship if we said no. Anyone else agree or disagree?
I agree.
Okay. You folks, everybody ready to take a vote on this? Okay.
Michael Murray,
No.
Jim Unger.
No.
I'm sorry. I got you out of order, but I got your vote. Jim O'Brien,
No.
Peter Belo,
No.
Jonathan Gifford.
No.
Your vote is 0-5-0, and the motion is defeated.
Okay. Do you want to go on?
For your consideration. Appreciate it.
Thank you for your presentation.
Charlie, are you going to withdraw the second one? As being moot?
Do I have to do it at this moment?
It either gets withdrawn or we move forward with it, one or the other.
Yeah.
All right, I'll withdraw
Okay.
without prejudice. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. Now. I want to recess for one moment, please. Maybe 2 moments.
Can you ask Frank to put it to?
Okay, we're back. Thank you for hanging in there, people in the audience here, our applicant, Mr. Zilch, and whoever's out there watching. So, Dee, would you read this last case?
Case number 23-04, a request from Richard Thomas, RFJ Motors, for a variance from Article 3, Section 220-16B to permit a vehicular dealership within 1,000 feet of an existing vehicular dealership. The property is located at 78 Plaistow Road, Tax Map 27, Lot 16, in the C1 zoning district. The property owner of record is Pest End, Inc.
Okay, what are we looking at here, folks?
Well, I'm here on behalf of the property owner, Pest End, which is Andy Karachi. And then we have the applicant, Richard Thomas of RFJ Motors, here with me. And this is for, as Dee noted, a variance request to allow a vehicular dealership within 1,000 feet of another dealership for his property here at 78 Plaistow Road. Obviously, Richard doesn't own the property. He has an interest in buying the property from Mr. Karachi. So I have agent authorization in your packet from Mr. Karachi, who is not here with us tonight. So the property, as Dee noted, is lot 27-16. This is a 0.7 acre lot of record with approximately 156 feet of frontage on the west side of Plaistow Road, or 125, and 183 feet of frontage on the north side of East Road. So it's a nice little corner lot. I think everybody's probably pretty familiar with it. Andy had picked up not only this building, but the two buildings to the north of it, and that all became part of his Pest End enterprise down in that section of town. So Andy's kind of breaking things up now and has an interest in this building here. So the lot, as noted, is entirely within the commercial one zone. It's abutted by the low density zone on just the west side. There's commercial businesses that surround it north, east, and south. And then you have one residential home on the west side, as you can see from the plan that we have up on the screen. So on that lot, you have a 1,815 square foot, one-story commercial building. It's a brick on slab building. It was constructed probably in the mid-70s, and it serves as an automotive garage and is still currently configured for such service. So it's always been a garage. It still looks like a garage, and the inside of it is a garage. So the two garage bay doors on the south, and there's a single garage bay door on the north side of the building to allow for drive-through. So it also has room for two bay vehicle service. And then, like I said, you can drive through on just one of those bays. One's in and out on the south side. So within the building, in that service area, it's got an automotive lift. It's got two small offices on both the east and the west side on either side of the building. So it's also served by an on-site well and septic system on the site as well. And I think this property is also
They are
eligible.
connected into the water already.
What's that?
They're connected into the water already.
Oh, they are already?
Yep.
Okay. So, yeah. So you also have a fairly generous paved area around the building. As you can see, you have two entrance points. One comes in off of Plaistow Road. That's a right in and right out only. You can't cross the road there. And then your access from East Road is a two-way in and out. There's also a large gravel parking area on the western edge of the parking lot, the paved parking lot, and that terminates at the top of the slope. Then at the base of the slope there's a wetland. The lot is currently subject to an access easement that Andy had set up to serve abutting lot 27-17. That would be extinguished upon the sale of the property. So he gave himself, because he has his Pest End business, the right to pass through this through an easement. So if this does sell, then that easement would be terminated, and it would be just access only for this lot and no drive-through for anyone else. So like I said, Pest End's in transition. It's moving its business from this site and the other two sites elsewhere. And so as approved by site plan in 2018, when Andy bought this lot, Pest End utilized the site for what is called automotive fleet maintenance in support of the office next door at 80 Plaistow Road, which is where he has office space. So that approval effectively ended the automotive sales use of this lot that had basically been here allowed here for decades as a grandfathered use. So this site has always been for vehicle sales. You may remember previous to Pest End ownership, it had the mega store that was owned by Rob Waters. And then prior to that was Levitt, operated by Mr. Levitt. He had that for a number of years. Then there was several dealerships that preceded him, pretty much go all the way back to the building's inception back in the 70s. So it's always been an automotive dealership. So by the zoning ordinance, this Article 3, Section 22016B, that limits similar uses by maintaining a 1,000-foot setback between dealerships in business dealerships operating as automotive dealerships. So in this particular case, there's basically 3 dealerships operating within that 1,000-foot setback that were in business when the use was terminated in 2018. So there's 3 businesses out there still in operation that were there when this was still being used as an automotive dealership. Still there, and I can list those 3. So the closest one, and that's to the south, that's on 7 Blossom Road, which is, it doesn't show up on this plan, but it's to the west side of Route 125. Blossom Road kind of comes in, it's one of those little back roads. There's a dealership there, it's very, very small. That's about 440 feet away, property line to property line, closest point to closest point. And then the 2 that I'm sure everybody's familiar with, the one at 77, 77 Plaistow Road, which is Cartech. And that's on the east side of 125. And that's about 520 feet northeast of this site, property line to property line. And then adjacent to that, to the north of Cartech, is Diesel World. And that one gets on the very outer limits. That's about 860 feet away. So those vehicle dealerships have been operating for quite some time. And what we're looking to do is reinstate the dealership here at this lot. So those are your 3 that were within 1,000 feet. So considering its historic use, Richard is hoping to establish his business at the site. And Richard's business, which is RFJ Motors that I just noted, is an automotive sales business. And what Richard specializes is basically the sales of specialty trucks. He takes trucks, well, his trucks are basically customized diesel, off-road, light commercial, and utility trucks. And he customizes those per client request. Most of the business is marketed to private sales, with some commercial as well. He also seeks trucks that he'd be able to bring into the existing service area, then modify with add-on accessories, tuning, lifts, different wheel packages and the like. Once they're modified, then he puts them out onto the site for display and sale. So that's basically the primary business that he'd like to establish. So he's hoping to maintain approximately 30 to 40 vehicles at any one time. Obviously, if this advances, we're going to have to go back to site plan approval. And so we'll have to look at parking and what he can actually set there. But what his goal is hopefully to get 30, 40 vehicles in there. In addition to the auto sales, which doesn't require variance, he's also interested in bringing some ATV sales onto the site as well. He has some ATVs that he could bring in there and offer. He'd also, one other thing he'd like to do, just for full disclosure, is he wants to keep a full-time employee there. And so one of the ways to do that is to have the service area offer state inspections. And we're talking about very light duty service there. Occasional oil changes. He's not going to be like a Jiffy Lube, anything like that. He's not going to keep tires on site. He'll bring them in from other warehouses, things like that. But general safety inspections, brake jobs, things like that, shocks, whatever a vehicle would need to pass inspection. And that'll keep his employee pretty busy, as well as working on the vehicles for sale and doing the sales at the site. So he's got a pretty good business plan for the site. And so he would like to get reestablished there. So I went through the criteria and addressed each one of those as best I could.
Great.
Richard's really anxious to get onto the site. He comes with some recommendations from some people that have worked with him in the past. Those were in the packet. I hope everybody had a chance to read those. He's excited about the site as the building has been sitting there under the recent ownership. It hasn't been transformed at all. It hasn't really been upgraded. It's just been used as fleet service. And so what Richard would like to do is come in and really clean up the facade. He'd like to bring in some landscaping and really make it an attractive site. It was a very attractive little building at one time. It's kind of, I wouldn't say it's run down, but it just hasn't been improved in quite some time. And he's got some great ideas, and I know that he would be an asset to this site. He would do some good service here. So I don't know if you wanted to talk a little bit more about your business or what you're intending to do here, but this would be a good opportunity.
Yes, thank
You
you
need to
all.
lean in a little closer to the microphone. Sorry.
Excuse me. Yep. No, thank you all. Charlie kind of touched on everything. I've been in this business for quite some time. I kind of have a niche, very close to, kind of the competition, so to speak, on 125. The other dealerships, I have, other recommendations, upon request from likes of the Levitt and Brian, Orlando, things like that. It's not a direct competition situation per se. It's more of a friendly situation. My background is I worked with Chris Mastriano, who was Brian Orlando's partner in the mega store that started in 2000. They kind of split up. We started Dieselland and Mastriano Motors in Salem, New Hampshire. So I've been kind of running the front to back operations at Mastriano Motors for the last 8 years. The contract came up for, renewal, and I decided to take it another direction from a family standpoint. And I, as far as running a good, clean business, having good, clean customers, I have a fantastic track record of taking care of my customers, zero complaints from both a state level, town level, and that reoccurring business and that clientele shows. To me, this is a long-term family situation, and cleaning up the building, making it appealing for Plaistow, and just running a good, clean operation from start to finish. That's my focus.
Anybody have any questions or comments before we go into the 5 criteria? Okay. Cool.
Thank you.
All right, the criteria.
Yeah.
Number one, the proposed variance will not be contrary to the public interest because the response is by granting the variance, it will allow Mr. Thomas the full productive use of the property and business. When the building was constructed, it was intended to be utilized for automotive sales and service. Its location and access lends itself to this type of business and, as noted, has had a long history of supporting that use. Prior to the change of use in 2018 to automotive fleet maintenance, the automotive sales at the site existed, as did several others, all within the 1,000-foot setback from one another. By allowing the use to be reinstated, it will allow for the site to be operated as it was always traditionally operated. Automotive sales is as diverse as the types of vehicles produced, and each dealership caters to its own individual customer looking for that specialty vehicle, meaning that there is room to allow for diversity of types of dealerships within reasonable proximity to each other without adversely affecting existing businesses, as with this case. The site is well suited for the use and offers excellent exposure to ensure success of the business. The business has a long track record of success at this site and can be operated safely and efficiently as before. The spirit and intent of the ordinance is preserved. The intent of the ordinance is to ensure adequate setbacks are provided between automotive dealerships. It is my belief that the ordinance, when written, it was meant to restrict large-scale automotive dealerships from overcrowding the available commercial space, in effect creating one large dealership after another side by side, limiting available commercial space that would otherwise offer the diversity of business now enjoyed along this stretch of commercial roadway. In this particular case, we are requesting to reinstate a use that has long been established at the site that is limited in size and operation and is no way similar to a large-scale automotive manufacturer's dealership. The closest dealership to the south is not even on Plaistow Road, and the closest dealership to the north is on the opposite side of the road. The 1,000-foot setback applied to these dealerships and its closest dealerships would be better served by a ratio based upon the size of business, in my opinion. If that was applied, the current locations and our proposed location would most likely comply. There is separation from one site to the other as intended by the ordinance, but the use is substantially less than what the ordinance intends to restrict. As such, the spirit and intent of the ordinance is preserved. Number 3, there is substantial justice in granting the variance, and the response is to reinstate vehicle sales to this business allows for full functional use of the site, the building and its equipment, and the existing parking space. It allows for a site with exposure to Plastow Road to operate as it had always been operated, all of which enhance the business without impacting the abutting property owners or general public. There is substantial justice in granting the variance, which allows for the full productive use of the property without sacrificing the existing intended use. Number 4, the values of the surrounding properties will not be diminished. The response is granting the variance would allow Mr. Thomas the ability to conduct his business at the location. His plans are to make improvements to the existing building and the property, as well as to maintain a clean, orderly site while offering well-optioned specialty vehicles. Currently, the site supports fleet storage and maintenance of commercial vehicles. Changing to automotive sales and service more or less maintains what the site has always been designed to do, with the only difference is adding sales within 1,000 feet of another similar business. Mr. Thomas will operate the site as allowed by site plan approval, considering that granting the variance only allows for the site to be operated as it had always been operated. The values of surrounding properties will not be diminished. And lastly, little enforcement of the provisions of the ordinance would result in unnecessary hardship. We respond that the zoning restriction does not consider particular instances such as this. This is not intended to be a full volume dealership. It will be limited vehicle sales supported by the existing site. The restriction unnecessarily limits the property already established and traditionally utilized for vehicle sales and service. Considering the limited request and the intent of the ordinance as a means to limit overcrowding of vehicular dealerships, full compliance with the setback is unnecessarily limiting. All considered denial would result in an unnecessary substantial hardship if little enforcement of the provisions of the ordinance were applied, especially in this application.
Does anybody have any questions?
I think you just have a gray area where Pestin kept that equipment, their fleet maintenance on that area. That I realize that they lost their right for sales, but it's always been maintained as a vehicle maintenance and everything else. For me, my personal opinion, you're on Route 125. You're going to have car dealerships. They're not abutting car dealerships. They're giving spaces in between. It needs to have some beautification there. Not to sound crass, but
No,
the place needs a lot of attention, and I can't see it being an ice cream store or anything else, guys. In my humble opinion, we've granted variances with vehicle businesses within 1,000 feet of each other in the past.
I'm sorry, say that again?
I said we have granted vehicle sales and maintenance buildings in the past
I'm not aware of that.
on Westville
Lynn's
Road.
Auto.
Oh, Blinn.
Yeah,
I did.
Well, it's a very interesting requirement because it's the only occupancy that's allowed there that has limits like that.
right.
And not only that, it's like saying you're allowed to have this, but you're not allowed to have this because this guy already has it.
Well, I understand the reasoning behind the 1,000
Yeah.
feet, but at the same time, the uniqueness of this property, the way that it's set up, it fits the criteria to. I can see a hardship on the seller because it's always been that type of a business there. It's always going to want to be that business there, and it's the perfect location for. You've got a Dunkin' across the street. You've got, you know what I mean? I'm not overselling it. I can't see too many other applications for that. If you've had car dealerships there already, once you start breaking ground, I don't think you want to go there. So,
Well, that's what I'm saying. A lot of times that'll make it more difficult to sell a lot like this because if you notice, there's monitoring wells all over the place.
right.
And a lot of companies will come in and they don't want to put their ice cream shop where someone's done automotive work for 50 years. To me, it seems like it's made for that use.
But do we have any questions for the applicant?
Not really.
Do we have any questions for the applicants? Okay, you said you've done some planning on what you plan to move forward with this. What is your proposed budget to do landscaping, upkeep, bring the building up to a aesthetically pleasing?
Sure, it really kind of is a 2-year plan. The top of the building with the roof structure, it needs some care. There's some temporary band-aids, so to speak, that have been put to it. That's kind of the second half of the plan. I could show you some images. I've already gone in there. I've completely kind of gutted out all the old structure that used to be a bathroom, so to speak. It was not correctly tied into the sewer system. There was not a multi-sex bathroom there. I put 2 separate bathrooms in there, both handicapped accessible, with all the newer amenities, all the plumbing done precisely to by a local plumber here, and that's just for the inside of it. And why I did that is just kind of once we made the deal, because if I have the advertisement here that when I initially signed the purchase and sale on the building, it's clearly advertised as automotive sales and service. So, and Dee can attest to this, that figuring out that it was not what it was represented to be, it was something that kind of happened after I was several $100,000s into this situation. And from an SBA standpoint of closing the loan, which we would have already done had there been these provisions in place, I decided to kind of roll the dice and start to do some of these things, knowing that contractors are backed up and things like that. So I started the portion of the inside. I have actually myself gone out and cleaned up a bunch of things on the outside. I mean, there was piles of plywood, and there was the storage container and all kinds of trash out back of the storage container that's there. That, by the way, that will be gone as soon as I'm waiting for the Karachis to give me the purchase and sale on the actual storage container, because that's going to be moved off site. You can see it's existing there. I know that Dee has struggled for quite some time. There used to be 2 storage containers there.
One gone.
They didn't seem to be compliant. My background is the opposite. And basically from very good friends with the Levitts, I have a picture on my phone that shows when they were, kind of in full stride. Okay. The facade of the building, they had nice signage.
I remember one
They had a
Bobby
nice
was
paint job. Windows, doors replaced, things like that. Instead of having pieces of plywood covering over windows, those will all be done. I have, several $100,000 at my disposal to be able to make these things happen. I've already spent somewhere in the neighborhood of about $20,000+ on the inside of the building, and really I'm going to continue to beautify it. The other portion of it is it has an electrical system in there that any code enforcement would walk in and just be, kind of appalled. I have already purchased all the supplies. I already have a licensed electrician that is going to pull a permit, go in there and get everything up to speed. The lifts, the lights, things like that, they're not even run off a switch. They're run off of a breaker in the panel. So half of which I've already done. I've taken a good amount of the illegal Romex that ended up stubbing out in the walls that weren't even capped off. All that's stripped out of the building now, which really was a fire hazard. I took down, all the insulation, the asbestos. There was a black mold problem, all that stuff, minus the office that is abutting the 125 side. What I've done is I've closed off that building to the rest of the garage for now. There's a padlock on it, and it's kind of plasticed off so it doesn't contaminate the existing building. But basically, if I can get to the point to where I know that I will be able to execute the business plan, that will also be gutted out. The other side of the parking lot where there was an office, there was insulation that was from, I think about the 80s. up in there. There was a mold issue there. That's all been mitigated. I literally gutted the whole thing, fixed up the structure somewhat, put all new insulation, put all new electrical in there. So, from a safety standpoint, I'm addressing all those things. I want employees to have a good quality of life, to be able to, my office manager that's been with me for the past 10 years, she doesn't like going in the bathroom behind a mechanic, which I understand completely. So therefore we have, 2 separate bathrooms. There was a wash sink that the drain to the wash sink exited the side of the building, and it would just run down the driveway. That's gone. I've piped it in, to the septic system correctly. Everything's done to code. On the outside of the building, my plan is to go down the 4 sides of the building, and paint a kind of a black, and it's going to be checked based upon the blocking, so kind of have a nice looking design, so it has a nice line and pop. The trim around the roof line, step 1 is it will be to paint that to a matching black, nice signage, nice lights on the outside, all LED. They have lights in there that draw so much power and they're not efficient. I've already contacted the state of New Hampshire. I've already purchased the LED lighting to convert it to consume less electricity. There's actually 2 services in that building that honestly, that could run, the 2 services in there could run, tractor supply up the street. So that's going to be changed so it's more efficient and less power from the grid. The second step of that will be to put a new roof on it. I'm not looking to expand, out at all. I will file a permit and do everything correct. Ideally, what I would like to have happen is kind of a little bit of a peaked roof, so I don't have that flat roof issue. And then potentially maybe gain, a space up there for my own personal office, so I can have employees in the other 2 small offices. But from a landscaping standpoint, you could see at Mastriano Motors in Salem, every year for 8 years, we won awards from the town for the best landscape properties, flowers. I created Disney experience. When people came into our dealership, they felt proud of what they were doing. They got a great product and they just felt really good about it. And I want to transition that, to this building and make it something for my family. Thank you all.
Okay.
Thank you.
And the question, I believe earlier you mentioned be handling like up to 30 or 40 vehicles at a time. And that lot seems to be very small to have that many vehicles sitting on the property. How are you going to handle that situation?
So just if you look at the background of that, the Levitts and the previous licenses were 40 plus. Part of the reason with that is that, if you're selling, say, 8 vehicles per week, okay, that's 32 per month. The numbers are technically in the market that you need to have about 60 vehicles that you own, that you've purchased. Most of the time what happens is a good portion of those vehicles are sitting in a service department. We're going to do very minor service there. We're not going to be doing tires, all these things, because, from a space standpoint, having tire machines and things like that, it's not, we have Town Fair, we have Sullivan Tire down the street. So there's going to be, at any one period of time, if I have a 40-car license, there's going to be 15 vehicles out being serviced at third parties. Places like AJA, Automotive, Levitts, they have a bigger service situation, in outsourced tires, things like that. So it's always that process. I have the picture on my phone. I counted the vehicles. They had 43 sitting on the lot. They had a couple in the back service line, and there was still room left for customer parking, employee parking, and things like that. So it's I guess my point here is it's deceiving.
Okay.
Yeah, because I'd have difficulty just envisioning 40 cars on that lot at any given moment myself. But I'm not in the business. I'm not an engineer either. So
Yeah, one thing to consider too with some of the site plan approvals that we've had approved by the planning board, they allow, unlike customer or employee parking, you can stack parking for vehicle sales.
Sure.
Like you have that at Diesel World. They have that. They have
Yeah.
spaces allotted there one after another. And it's up to the property manager to move the vehicles in and out of those spaces.
Sure.
So you can stack them. So there's the opportunity here at this site that would help
And again,
take
that's
advantage of that space.
and that's frankly not our problem here. It's that's for the planning board. If we approve this, it's got to go to the planning board, and they have to approve a new plan for the site. So
Correct.
So it's not our issue.
Good question, but not in our control.
I'm sorry.
It's a good question, but not in our control.
Right. Did you have any communications on this?
I do. I have 3 letters that were included in the application packet. Oops, I'm sorry, I'm not doing my microphone thing. First one is from Nancy J. Spencer from 169 North Road in Brentwood, New Hampshire. To whom it may concern, over 5 years ago, Richard F. Thomas Jr. hired me as the office manager for Mastriano Motors, LLC. Having worked as an office manager for several other dealerships in the past, I feel confident making the statement that Mr. Thomas displays management skills far above what I have seen in the past. His work ethic and treatment of colleagues is above reproach. His knowledge of automotive marketplace enables him to discuss the business and deals with ease. His interpersonal skills create a positive customer-dealer relationship that the customers know will result in a quality deal and follow-up service from Mr. Thomas. This is evidenced by strong repeat business Mr. Thomas has generated for years. Earlier this year, I decided that I would retire at the end of 2022. Upon learning that Mr. Thomas was opening his own dealership, I canceled my retirement plans. I'm excited to work with him in his new business and help him succeed and thrive. Mr. Thomas has talent and drive to make his new business successful, and I am proud to support him. Next one is from Michael R. DeLuca, Director of Business Development, Auto Auction of New England, 8 Action Boulevard in Londonderry. To whom it may concern, it is with pleasure that I submit this letter of recommendation to you on behalf of Richard F. Thomas. Richie F. Thomas is one of the finest individuals in the New Hampshire and Mass automotive industry. I've known Richie for 20 years. He's a gentleman first and foremost in the industry, and that is very challenging. His 30-plus years of experience have earned him a thorough knowledge of retail and wholesale automotive industry and has positioned him as an extremely skilled businessman. I value my friendship with Richie and strong support of his efforts to take his business to next level. I'm available to answer questions in the future. And the third one is from Craig Shirley, Vice President of Floor Plan Auto Use. Dear sirs, it is certainly my sincere pleasure to provide you with this letter of recommendation on behalf of Richie Thomas. I am Vice President of Floor Plan Operations for Auto Use. I have been employed by Auto Use for 30 years. I've had the privilege of meeting and building relationships with hundreds of dealer customers over my career, and Richie is one of the best. Richie was instrumental in helping me forge a lasting relationship with everyone affiliated with Mastriano Motors. Richie has always been a pleasure to work with. He clearly values his relationship with me personally and with Auto Use. His attention to detail has always been very much appreciated. If I needed something, I never doubted Richie would handle it and handle it in a swift and professional manner. Richie Thomas works tireless to make Mastriano Motors one of the best independent truck dealers in southern New Hampshire. He took great pride in providing his customers with top-notch vehicles and a first-class buying experience. I highly recommend Richard Thomas, I am excited for his next adventure and hope he allows me and Auto Use along for the ride. We need many more dealer customers like Richard Thomas. Thank you for your time, and please do not hesitate to reach out to me. I would do anything to help Richie in his future endeavors. It's the hour. That's why I'm stumbling. Sorry.
Okay.
But beyond those, I received nothing else.
Okay. Do we have anybody in the audience who wishes to make a comment or ask a question? I think there's 2 people back there. Okay. Any final comments or questions from the board?
None from me.
No?
Any final comments, folks, before I call the hearing to a close?
I'm all set. Thank you.
I'm all set. Thank you all.
Okay. In that case, we're calling this hearing to a close and go into deliberative on this. You're welcome to stay there, or you can go back, whatever, wherever you guys feel comfortable. Does somebody have a motion?
I move to grant the request for a variance for Article 3, 220-16B, to allow a vehicular dealership at the property known as 78 Plaistow Road, tax map 27, lot 16, in the C1 zoning district, with the following conditions. The applicant will need to seek planning board approval of an amended site plan to include vehicular dealership use. The plan that was submitted with the application shall be the same plan that is submitted to the planning board as it relates to the variance granted. Any change to the plan as it relates to the variance voids the approval. The application to the planning board must be made within 180 days of the date of the approval. Any other conditions that the board?
That's okay.
Okay.
Unless you have another condition you'd like to put on it.
Nope.
Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Mr. Unger. Okay. So any initial thoughts on this before we go through the variance criteria? I'm not hearing any. Okay. The proposed variance will not be contrary to the public interest because it's actually a similar use to what has been there all along. It's
Pretty much.
a garage with things parked next to it. Well, prettier garage, but
I understand that, when you lose that, when he changed the value of the land, the usage of the land, that negates the grandfathered clause there. But I just can't see another application for this particular lot.
and the change, again, I don't think I'm mischaracterizing. I mean, they used to sell cars there and do some repair. So it changed use. They ceased selling vehicles, but they still kept vehicles there
And maintain vehicles.
and maintained vehicles there.
Right.
The only real difference was the for sale sign.
Right. And at the same fact, none of the other buildings or businesses that are in that dealership venue popped up in those years. They were already existing there.
Yeah.
So
So yeah,
I'm not trying to sell it. I'm just stating the facts. It just seems.
So I'm not seeing how it would be contrary to the public interest. It's short form.
No, if I just one, I'm not saying I'm against it, but just one thing I had noticed in going through the planning board's economic development survey was next to traffic and traffic enforcement and sidewalks, the number of automotive dealerships and several other types of businesses had several negative comments in the survey, but again, that's a survey.
Right, and that's, yeah, I'm not sure how I'd take that into account.
But it's just to make sure that you're aware of it.
Yeah. It's good of you to read that.
I'm going to say gold star, Mr. Murray.
The spirit and intent of the ordinance is preserved. I don't know if we agree with the assertion that zoning ordinance really was targeted at larger sales operations, automotive sales operations. I can see that.
Well, I think part of the ordinance as well, because I remember it well when it came into being, because I'm, as you know, heavily into cars. They were saying we were getting so many used car dealerships that if there was a downturn in the economy and they all went out of business, we'd be a ghost town. Well, that never happened because the good dealerships are going to stay in business and the bad dealerships are going to go out of business anyways. It doesn't seem like there's just too many along there right now.
No. And I said, it's just the comments from the population to the survey.
Right. They'd all want there to
I just
be-
think should be, aware of it, and just, I feel it needed to be at least put forward and said.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Make your
Well,
own.
that
I
was
agree.
a good
but
point.
It's the type of area it is. If you go up Route 28 in Salem, it's a similar way. People, it's just like, people's comments when we have articles about the town center. They'd like it to be all little businesses and things that will never really exist. It would be great if it could, but a lot of things that people want on those surveys aren't practical
No.
for a businessman to
To
build.
be fair, there's also comments in there that would indicate people want to go back 30, 40 years to the way the town was then, but
Right. They'd like to put farms back and things, and you can't go backwards.
Although it's great to have a farm on Main Street again.
Yep.
There you go. Okay. There's substantial justice in granting this variance. Well, let me ask you, what gain is there to the general public in not granting this?
It's no gain to having a vacant building, because that's what it'll become.
Right. So yeah.
What the building has in it now, where it already has lifts in it, it's already set up for that use.
Right.
I think it's already been said, it would really limit what kind of businesses might even conceive going in there.
Right.
I mean, a florist's gonna go in there and have to rip out lifts and everything else. That can be an expense that that type of business wouldn't willing to be executed.
Although, having 2 stories worth of flowers that they can move up and down on the value. I don't know. So I'm just trying. The values of the surrounding properties will not be diminished if we change this use. I don't see it.
No.
It's a commercial use. It's going to
Right.
stay commercial, so I can't see where it would.
Right. And it's, we're never going to have another Walmart come in and build there. There's going to be a small something business there, whether it's this one or another one. Smaller business. I'm not trying to denigrate it, but it's like, there's just no, larger business that might attract other larger businesses that could ever go into that property. It's just too small. So
Right.
literal enforcement of the provisions of the ordinance would result in an unnecessary hardship. We also have to look at the fact that half of that property, give or take, is also wetlands. So you've got a sub 1 acre where you can use half of it, just about half of it. Frankly, I wonder if you could even do some things that were done a long time ago when it was cool with that property. The gravel, as you go to the embankment down there, that might be like wetlands buffer intrusion these days. It's a moderately small property, smallish, on 125. That's got a building on it now that's clearly automotive based. So we're either going to just have it, be a maintenance location or maintenance and sales. It's, the whole issue of storage. There's always been vehicles stored on that property, one way or another.
And some garages, I've seen plenty that if they do nothing but repairs, half the time part of the lot ends up like a junkyard with the cars that never got finished or never got repaired. Better off having good quality vehicles in there that are moving on.
We ready to vote, folks?
I am.
Okay, D, please.
Jim O'Brien,
Yes.
Peter Belo,
Yes.
John Gifford,
Yes.
Jim Unger,
Yes.
Michael Murray.
Yes.
Your vote is 5-0-0.
Have a good night, guys.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
And good luck with it.
You all appreciate it. You'll be happy with what you see.
Good.
Given what's there, I don't see how I couldn't be.
You'll be extremely happy with this.
So,
trust me.
okay.
Thank you all. Appreciate it. Have a wonderful night.
Yeah, you too.
You too.
Okay. We've got a couple other,
Could I ask that we review and approve the minutes?
you can, and we shall. We shall, I hope. As soon as I find them here, I did find it. Sorted out earlier.
Yeah, they were,
There it is. Minutes from February 23rd, 2023.
Like I said, these are pretty much the easiest minutes I've ever done.
Yeah, I read it in about 30 seconds.
That was,
Like, hey, that's
as far
what
as I can
happened.
tell, that was the shortest meeting we had ever. It was like 6 minutes.
Yeah.
So do we have a motion?
I'll motion to approve the minutes.
second,
Thank you. Any questions or comments? I read them and it's fine.
I read them.
Some of the best minutes I've read this week.
clear, concise.
To the point even.
You ready to vote?
Laughed, I cried.
You ready to vote?
Sure.
Move it on.
Peter Bealow,
Yes.
John Gifford,
Yes.
Jim Unger,
Yes.
Michael Murray,
Yes.
Jim O'Brien.
Yes.
Vote is 5-0-0.
Okay.
You also have first reading of the proposed bylaw amendment changes.
Refresh my memory. Do we have to read them all or just
No,
the
we only have to
changes?
read what the changes are.
There we go.
So the first one is under the section, is creating a new section called training.
Yep.
To read, members of the board are expected to keep up to date with changes in local ordinances and New Hampshire RSAs. Therefore, each member is required to attend at least one approved training session during each 3-year term as a member or as an alternate member of the board, providing that approved training is available. The cost, if any, for member training opportunities shall be covered by the town. Members may seek training on their own, but must have it pre-approved by the board as appropriate training and by the town for payment of training. Confirmation of training attendance shall be submitted to the town for reimbursement. If the town prepays for training and the member does not attend, the member may have to reimburse the town for the cost of training. That's a may, not a shall, because stuff happens. The
Okay.
second change is under the section for application decision, and there's a few changes in there. Just adding the word mailing addresses in the sentence that in the bullet point that reads names and mailing addresses of all abutters, property owners, and other consultants, including legal counsel if applicable. This is under what constitutes a complete application. Another bullet point originally read any letters of denial from other boards, committees, commissions, and departments to be now read, if the application is for a variance, then it must include any letters of denial or recommendations from an appropriate board, committee, commission, or department, and or a zoning determination document from the zoning officer detailing the specific need for the variance as requested. Changing bullet point as related plans or deeds if required, and then just to add for the specific application to make it more concise. And then bullet point electronic digital copies of all listed items except the mailing labels, because people will email me copies of the mailing labels, which I do not need. And those are the only changes. In order to make these changes, they have to be read at 2 successive meetings, and then you vote whether or not to adopt the changes. So this would be reading 1.
Okay.
Anybody have any questions about?
Yeah. As I hear, things look different to me when I read them. I just read them in my head versus when I hear them.
Okay.
And one of the things I noted, the only thing I noted was on page 3 near the bottom, if the application is for a variant, the change application is for a variance, then it must include any letters, denials, recommendations, or from, it says "and appropriate boards." It should be, just lose the word "and," from appropriate.
From
boards.
an appropriate board, committee, commission, or,
Well, the thing is, "and" should go with a singular.
She's striking out the S's.
No.
I am striking out the S's.
The S's are struck.
She's removed the S's.
Oh, never mind. From an appropriate. Well, okay, fine. I'm sorry.
I just didn't put it in red, I'm sorry.
Sorry about that. Okay, I'm good. Then in that case, I'm good.
Okay.
Okay, we read it.
Awesome.
Read it. I wish there was a way to get.
Oh, then the last thing I have is a discussion
This will be the next to the last thing. I have one other
Okay.
to add.
the last thing I have.
Yes.
It's, hold on, I have to catch up my note here for a second. We've received a request from the planning board chair to, and I includes the email thread, I'm not going to go through the whole email thread, about requesting to come in and have a discussion with the board. Because of the nature of this board and the relationship with the planning board and the fact that applications could end up on both sides, I posed this to Attorney Clary to get his thoughts on what he thought, and they're in the email thread as well. So the board needs to make a decision if this is something they want to engage in, don't want to engage in, want to engage in under certain circumstances. Charlie is recommending that it be educational only on each other's process, be no discussion at all of any kind of applications pending, past, future. The zoning board has no jurisdiction over the master plan, so that's really not a topic or any kind of other studies that the planning board may do. So to discuss it, and if it comes to this board as in the form of a variance, could be seen as a bias by this board if you express an opinion to the planning board. So that could be cause for recusal. And as far as the zoning ordinances themselves, the planning board does not interpret them for the zoning board. That's either the job of the zoning official initially, or if it comes here in this confusion, this board would make that decision. But it's not the planning board that interprets the zoning. They propose changes that the voters vote on. So that's was Charlie's cautions about having any kind of a meeting.
So couple comments to begin with. Just for the record, in case anybody's listening out there in TV land to this discussion, Dee didn't just go off on our own to our attorney. We had a discussion about it first, and we agreed. It was a mutual agreement. I don't want to make it look like, I don't want people to hear that Dee on our own went to an attorney to check this out, because that is not the case. Okay. And the second thing is, I've watched enough recent planning board meetings, or at least portions of them, to personally feel that, it's not through malice or anything, but I don't believe most of the planning board members really understand our process and our limitations and what we need to do, what laws we need to follow. So I think it would be a good idea if we could just sit down with them and talk about their process versus ours, but not go into all this other thing, all the rest of the stuff that they proposed. It's because we can't. I agree with Attorney Cleary.
I think if we start weighing apples and oranges against what goes on here, it will inevitably change how we view and make our judgments. And our judgment should not be biased by any means.
Oh, absolutely.
So in my eyes, I don't think that we can certainly watch planning board meetings, and I do, to understand what goes on at planning board meetings and what their greater scheme or theme is. I think that it would tend to weigh on decisions, as in my personal opinion. So I think we can all learn quite a bit by watching the planning board, and I'm sure the planning board can learn what our facets are here. But I just can't see, I see it as a conflict of interest if we were to sit down. And that's my personal opinion.
I'm glad you're willing to give us your personal opinion. That's good. We all have them. Any other thoughts, guys? We want to do this?
Just seems like by reading Charlie's email, we'd be very, very limited on what each board could discuss.
Yeah.
And it may be hard to stick to that.
Yeah.
Be hard to stay on track, yeah.
I'd have to bring my fly swatter and just,
Yeah, and you know, and frankly, you know, we now that the conference, the spring conference, is all a Zoom meeting, and that's recorded. You can go back to later. If any of us wanted to learn about planning board processes, we could just on our own time listen to the planning board training section of that, and the planning board folks could do the same by, you know, listening to the zoning board section of the conference. So do we want to take a vote or just say there's a consensus that, yeah, no, thank you, no, we're not going to do this? How formal should we be?
I think you can table it for 6 months and see how everything goes.
Okay, but for now, thank you,
For
no.
now. Okay.
Okay, we all good with that?
Yes.
Okay. You got enough there, Dee?
yep, you'll form a response to the email?
Pardon me?
You'll form a response to the email
If
for
the
me to
board
forward?
is okay with me doing that?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. So the last thing I wanted to bring up is our former member, Gary Ingham, is getting married this weekend.
Oh, wow.
Yes, he is.
And I was just wondering if the board would, as a board, would offer him our best wishes.
Absolutely. I'm happy to see him happy.
Yeah, I was
He
very pleasantly surprised when I saw that.
in a disarray, and I'm glad he got his life together down south.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Dee, do you want to put something together, or shall I just pig him on that?
It's all you.
Okay. I'm good with that.
Oh,
Just didn't want to step on toes.
I got my shoes on. I'm all set.
Okay. Anything else?
Not for me.
Okay.
How about you officially say 8:42?